We follow our main character. It's been a while. What the heck's her name? Martha. Martha. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some middle grade recommendations. Today I thought we would do just some fun middle grade recommendations since next month is the final round of Believathon, which is hosted by Gavin over at How to Train Your Gavin. I'm sure if you've been on any portion of the bookternet, you've probably heard of this readathon, but it is a readathon that Gavin created a couple of years ago because he was all into like making sure people read middle grade and children's books because they're very important, and I agree. So he created a readathon based all around that, and it is the final round. And I thought it might be kind of fun just to do some recommendations of books that I've read that would fit the prompts for the readathon. I came up with this idea before he even announced what the prompts were. So he announced that there was going to be 30 prompts. So we've got more than 30 books to show you today. So this is going to be a video. But I'm going to try to get through them relatively quickly. All the books I mentioned, as always, will be linked down below, so you can definitely check them out if you would like to learn more information about the ones that I'm going to mention. But I'm just going to go through these prompts one by one. If you would like to kind of figure out more about the readathon, I will leave his announcement video down below. I thought as kind of like a tribute, if you will, to Gavin and to the readathon that he has created, which really kind of got me into reading middle grade. Like, I read middle grade, but I didn't read middle grade until he kind of started this readathon. So I thought I would just kind of take the time and go, thanks for creating it. Here are some things that I read because of it. So I hope you guys enjoy. Some of these are very personal kind of prompts. Like, for example, there's one in here that's like continue a series, which obviously is personal to you. So I've kind of created some that work for me for those prompts, but they will make sense as we get there. But the first one is to read an adventure. So I thought that I would recommend The Lovely Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. As you can see, this is a very well-loved and shiny copy, but I was obsessed with the series. It's a trilogy, and Inkheart is the first one. I don't know how to talk about this without blinding you guys. What if I put it over here? This book follows our main character, Maggie. Her father has this special ability that she doesn't know about until the events of this book, where if he reads out loud, something from the book he is reading or the passage that he is reading will materialize or kind of come out of the book into the real world. But on the flip side of that, something from this world will go into the book world, and it's just an adventure because of some stuff that has happened in the past and some characters that may or may not have come out of a story because of this ability. Now, this first one has definitely been made into a movie, but the books are so great, and I highly, highly suggest it for a great bookish adventure. The next one is to read a book that has a map in it. So I'm going to recommend The Phantom Toll Booth, which is by Norton Jester. Now, this is one that I have not read in many, many years, so I'm a little foggy on this one. But it does have a map right here in the front, or at least this copy does. Look how pretty that is. So this book is just kind of a fun adventure that follows our main character, Milo, who finds his life quite boring, actually. And then one day a toll booth just randomly appears in his bedroom, and he's like, I've got nothing better to do. Why not? And so he goes through it and finds this fantastical world where there's the Island of Conclusions, which you only get there by jumping to, because of course. He learns about time from a ticking watchdog named Talk, and he also embarks on a quest to rescue Rhyme and Reason. So it's just kind of a lot of like play on words in this world, but it is a fun adventure. So the third prompt is to read a historical, and the one that I think would be fantastic for this is this one, which is The Gallery by Laura Martz Fitzgerald. And I believe this takes place kind of in like the Roaring 20s or something, like 20s, 30s, around there. We follow Martha, and she kind of starts to work at her mom's job. Her mom works in this big mansion, and the guy who owns the mansion is kind of like this big newspaper man. He owns a very large newspaper, very, very rich, and he has a wife that is thought to be insane and just kind of hides upstairs. But it does take place kind of in the Roaring 20s, and Martha goes to work as a kind of made in this house, and there is a gallery of sorts. There's a lot of artwork, but it's a mystery surrounding this wife that is thought to be crazy. Or is she? You know, that kind of thing. But it definitely has those like 20s, 30s vibes to it. This is a great cozy mystery for you to just sit down and snuggle to, have a hot drink, great night, that kind of thing. If that's the vibe you're going for, then I highly suggest this one. The next one is a book that has illustrations, and I couldn't think of a better one besides this lovely series, which is The Magic Misfits by Neil Patrick Harris. Now, this is the first one and the only one that I've actually read, but it is a series that follows, I think, 5 friends? Yes. No, 6. 6 friends. And they're obsessed with, like, sleight of hand magic, and it's got some of the most stunning illustrations like throughout the book. It's just, and I love everything about this book. It's really fun. I like the way it's written as well. Neil Patrick Harris has a very fun writing style, and then in between all of the chapters there are pages that kind of tell you how things are done, so they explain some of the magic tricks that the kids are talking about. And it is kind of a mystery of sorts, but it's just fun. It's so much fun. I love this book so much. So the next one is one of those personalized ones, and that is to read an anticipated book. Now, obviously, I don't know what is anticipated for you guys, but one that I am very excited about is actually called Rumasa, I think is how you pronounce it. But it's basically kind of the story of Rapunzel, but instead of hair, she has a very long hijab. And I'm just fascinated by that idea, because you're giving this story, this fairy tale that we all know really well, but you're giving it kind of like a different culture twist to it, and I just think it sounds really interesting. Also, this cover, stunning, right? But yeah, that's one that I'm anticipating, so that's one that maybe like I would suggest for you. The next one is set in a faraway place, and how far away can you get than the past? So this one is Time Sigh, which is by Lynn Johnell. I don't even remember when I read this. I think it was at least a year ago. But this basically takes place in Scotland, and you've got these 2 brothers and their cousin who kind of are living in this mansion. Well, the 2 brothers come to Scotland from America because something happened with their mom, and so like their dad has gone off to figure out some stuff, and so they're staying with their cousin and in this castle, which is kind of a museum. And so they're learning about the history of the site that they kind of are living on for the time being, and there are portions of this land where they can go back in time. So if you like books that are kind of set in the Scottish Highlands surrounding history and kind of have a time travel aspect to it, I think you would enjoy this one. So the next one is to do a book that kind of has a very good sibling relationship, and I couldn't think of a better book than this one, which is called The Alchemist. This is the first in the series, which is called The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. Now, this is a 6 book series. It does follow a brother and sister duo, and I'm trying to remember their names. Sophie and Josh, that's who it is. They basically stumble into this adventure between Nicholas Flamel and this other guy who's trying to get the elixir of life to basically make him immortal. And it's crazy adventurous. And if you like mythology and folklore and things like that, and just random mentions, kind of like the Percy Jackson series, where like it's modern day and then all of these mythical people and beings show up, then you'll like this series. And also Michael Scott is a pretty well-known, or maybe not well-known, but like he studies a lot of mythology and folklore, so he's well-versed in that kind of stuff. But yeah, the sibling relationship in here is fantastic. The next one is another one that's kind of personal, and that is to continue a series. So I'm going to say one that I would like to continue, because I haven't read the beginning of this series, and that is the Morgan Crow series. I can't remember exactly. I think it's called the Nevermore series. We've got Nevermore, which is the Trials of Morgan Crow, and then we've got Wondersmith, which is the second one. And then the third one just came out, I think, last year, and it's called Hollowpox, and I haven't read that one quite yet. But it's basically like this story of a girl named Morgan Crow who is cursed. If she was born on a very specific day, and apparently if you're born on a specific day, you're cursed. And she, on the night that she thinks that she is going to die, she actually is whisked away to this other land by this guy named Jupiter North, and she kind of goes through all these trials to be part of a magical society, magical school. So if you like that magic school setting, I think you'll like this. I'm sure many people have heard of this series, but I personally loved this one. The second one I loved way more than the first one. I don't know why. but I just did. But I really enjoyed this, and it's one that I definitely would like to continue because I need to read the third one. I'm curious to see where the story goes, because we learned some things in the second book. We learned some things. Next one is to read a book featuring water or set around water, and I couldn't think of a better book than Peter and the Starcatchers, and this is by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. This is the first in, what was it, five book series? Is that right? Okay, 5-book series, and it basically is kind of a reimagining of the story of Peter Pan. Now, this first one really sets the stage for everything. We kind of see our Peter character, we see our Wendy character, we see our Hook character, our Tink character a little bit, things like that. But there's this fantastic just story that revolves around this dust. And I just like the way that it's written very well. It's really funny. It's definitely an adventure, and like, these are not small books, and I plowed through these. But of course, it's set around the water because you've got pirates and ships and things like that, and at least for the first book, it almost entirely takes place on a boat. So if you're looking for a good, fun adventure story set around water and you like pirates, here you go. The next one is to read a book that was released in 2021. And I actually had no idea, but then I remembered I had a book that I had read last year. I got an ARC copy of it, and that is actually the second in a graphic novel series, and this one is Delicates. The first one was Sheets, and it's all about kind of a haunted laundromat, but there's this really fascinating world around ghosts and like the sheets they wear, and you kind of do need the first one to set the world, but you can read the second one without reading the first one. But this one came out this year. I believe it came out in like March or sometime in the spring, but it is quite an important story. I will leave my Goodreads review down below if you'd like to check it out. Tons of trigger warnings for this book, but it does have some serious topics, especially for younger kids, about like mental health and suicide and things like that. So like I said, huge trigger warnings, but I thought it was very well done for like the age range that it was aiming towards, plus seeing some of these topics in a book for younger readers I thought was really important. But it did come out this year, and I highly recommend this, especially for a readathon. You need to fit some graphic novels in to help you out, and this is a great one to go with. The next one is to read a book that was released before 2021, and I'm not gonna lie, I have absolutely no idea. I know this wasn't released in 2021, but I don't remember when it was released. Let's find out, shall we? 2020. Awesome. And that is The Vanishing Trick, and this is by Ginny Spangler. This is for those of you who like Victorian, Edwardian England time period. So this follows our main character. I believe it is pronounced Leander. It's been a while. I read this one last year for Bealievathon, so I'm trying to remember all of the names. But he is an orphan. He's just trying to like living on the streets by his wits, and he runs into this very mysterious woman named Pinchback, and she basically offers him, you know, a job, a meal, place to live, take care of him, if he will hand over this locket that was his mother's and is really important to him. And he's like, well, sure, I'd like to survive. And it's all a trick, and she now captures him in this locket, and it's like magical craziness, and he can be summoned at will, but he's not the only person that she has captured. She's got 2 other people there, and it's just fun adventure goodness, and it's really fascinating. It's kind of, you know, it's mysterious. You're kind of learning about this person who's captured all these kids, and these kids are trying to escape and things like that. But they're also part of the show. It's almost circusy in an aspect because of the show that they put on. So it's really fascinating. I really like it, but I highly recommend, and this is definitely a Gavin pick for me. Not sure I would have found that without him. The next one is to read a book with a creature in the title. So I'm going to recommend The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson, because bear, I'm counting bear as a creature here. So this is just an adventure of a story. This is the second book by Sophie Anderson that I have read. I also have the one which is The House with the Chicken Legs, I believe, and then whatever her new one is about Tangled Magic. But this one is following our main character, Yanka. That's right, Yanka. And she's just kind of doesn't know where she came from. She was discovered in a bear den, and so they all kind of call her like the bear girl or the girl who speaks bear and things like that. And so she goes off on an adventure into the woods to figure out where the heck she came from. and she is learning some stuff about her. It's very much a kind of character-driven story because you're learning things about her and like maybe some stuff about her parents, and the woman who kind of like became her mom, who kind of took care of her, that kind of thing, and then what she wants out of life. And there's this fantastic element to it that like I didn't see coming, and it's the reason she goes into the woods, and it's just fascinating. I highly recommend. I definitely like this one better than her other book that I read. I don't know why, I just was more invested in the story. But if you like kind of Russian, Polish folklore, that kind of thing, but set in a pretty fun, fantastical world, and you like forests and creatures, this is your book. The next one is to read a book with own voices representation. And I have a few options for this one, but the one that I'm going to do is one that I read most recently, and that is this one, which is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. This basically follows our main character, Judah, who grew up in Syria. Her mom and her dad and her brother all lived in Syria. She loved it. They actually lived in this very touristy town. And so she's just living her life. And then some unsettling unsettlement within the government happens, and her mom and her are kind of sent to live with her mom's brother in America. We've got this culture clash for our main character with, the culture that she learned and grew up in Syria and in the very Americanized culture. You've also got her kind of in a school for the first time, looking a little different, and then kind of right at the time where Islamophobia really shot up in the US. You see that in this book as well. But it's also written in verse, so it's definitely great for readathons. You can get through it rather quickly, and it hits my heart, But Jasmine Warga said that she wrote this book so that there would be books for people who looked like her. So like when she grew up, she didn't have a lot of books where she could find someone who looked like her, so she wrote one. The next one is to read a book from your childhood. Again, pretty personal for you. But one that's from my childhood that I would recommend is this one, which is Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. I loved this book when I was younger. Now, at the time of reading this, that Kelsey would tell you very differently, because I think it took her an entire summer to read this very tiny book. But I just loved the story. The movie of this story is fantastic, but it follows this girl who finds this dog and just wants to take care of this dog. And because of this dog, she makes all of these really cool connections throughout the summer with people in the town. And it's just a very wholesome story, and I personally really loved it. And as you can see, it won the Newbery Honor Book Award. The next one is a Gavin recommendation, which again, pretty personal. Check out his channel to see what he's got there. I would say a lot of these books are because of him, but one for sure that I picked up because of him was this one, which is Green Glass House. This is by Kate Milford. This is great for kind of the end of November, beginning of December, because it follows our main character who is on a Christmas break. So it does have those Christmas cold vibes, as you can tell by the cover. It's all kinds of snow. But it follows our main character, Milo, and he's adopted. He lives in this hotel with his parents, and it's the down season. They're not expecting a lot of people to come by, and then all of a sudden, all of these people start showing up, and he's like, well, what is happening? And so he goes on this grand adventure, kind of based on like a D&D type game almost, to figure out what's going on, why all these people are here, and what's bringing them to their little inn. What's going on, basically. Again, this is a great cozy mystery where you can just snuggle down. It's Christmas break, it's nice and cold, there's tons of scenes with the snow, and it just makes you cold while you're reading it, I'm not gonna lie. But it's perfect for like the end of November. This one's Gavin's fault. The next one is to read a contemporary, and one that I personally loved and think everyone should read because it's so good, is this one, which is Lily and Duncan by Donna Gephardt. So this takes place in 8th grade, and it follows these two characters as they kind of become friends. We've got Lily, who was born Timothy, but knows that she's a girl, but is kind of problematic when you're in 8th grade and you were born in a boy's body. So it's a lot of, talk of getting on hormone blockers before puberty hits and things like that. And then you've also got Duncan, who's going through a whole lot of mental health stuff on his own. And it's the two of them kind of being friends a little bit. And it's such an important story, I think, because you don't see, I feel like, a lot of this, at least I didn't growing up. I didn't see a lot of this in books for younger readers. You've got a lot of representation within this book. You've got a trans character, and you've also got a character who's dealing with his bipolar disorder. And so it's just a lot of stuff here, and I think it's really important, and I thought it was, you know, well done. So, contemporary. It's great. The next one is to read a book like that's kind of out of your favorite genre. And the one that I'm going to recommend for this, again, this is kind of personal, so it's hard to recommend a book because I don't know what all of your individual genres are. But one genre that I feel like a lot of people don't read a lot of, especially with middle grade, is actually graphic novels. So there's a graphic novel series, and the first one in this is The Witch Boy. It's basically set in this world or in the society where girls are witches. They have the ability to learn witchcraft and magic and things like that, whereas the boys are shapeshifters. And so we follow our main character, who's a boy, and he has an affinity towards magic, and he's more interested in like the witchcraft and the magic aspects than the shape-shifting aspects. And so it does kind of take a different look on gender roles as well within the society, and kind of like talks about like what happens when you kind of like stamp down what you really are feeling and thinking and things like that. So I thought it was really well done. Again, this is a series, so there's 3 in this. I've read the first 2. I have not been able to get my hands on the last one quite yet, but I feel like graphic novels, especially with middle grade, are not as well known about, and there's not a whole lot of them, so I thought I would recommend this one because I liked it. I thought it was a good one. The next one is kind of to read a shorter book, which is he's saying it's under 250 pages. So for this one, I'm going to recommend George by Alex Gino. Y'all knew this one was coming at some point. This follows our main character, George, and it's set in, I believe it is set in 4th grade. I think this is just a stunning book. But we follow George, who knows that she's a girl. However, everyone sees a boy when they look at George. And so it's her just kind of figuring all this out at the same time that their school is putting on the play of Charlotte's Web, and George really, really wants to be Charlotte. But of course, since George, everyone thinks that George is a boy, she's not allowed to be Charlotte. I think it was so well done. It talks a lot about, you know, issues with transgender kids at this time and kind of coming out to your friends and family and things like that. And I just think it's really well done and everyone should read it. And also it's tiny, so great for readathons.
And it got put on the banned book list.
And it got put on the banned book list according to the husband. So even more reason to read it. The next one is to read a book that is longer, like a longer book. So longer than 250 pages. And this one is almost 400, well, 350, and that is A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. This is the first in this Pinch of Magic series, and it follows 3 sisters and a family curse. And magical objects. I mean, what more could you want? 3 sisters trapped by an ancient curse. 3 magical objects with the power to change their fate. Will they be enough to break the curse? Or will they lead the sisters even deeper into danger? It follows the 3 sisters, like it says on the back, that has these magical objects, but they didn't realize they have magical objects, but they've always been told that they can't leave the kind of island where they live. It's because of a curse. And so it's them learning about the curse and trying to break the curse and all the fantastical things that come from that. And this is the first in a trilogy. There are 2 other books in the series. I have only read this one, but I loved it, so I highly recommend for fun adventures. And I don't know, but like just something about her writing, you just like fly through it. It's so great. So next one is to read a book with your favorite color on the cover somewhere. So again, another personal one I can't really help you with, but my favorite color is purple, so I'm going to give you a purple cover, and that is going to be Aru Shah and the End of Time. This is the first in the Aru Shah series. It's by Roshni Chokshi, and this is just I love the series so much. There's 4 in the series. They are all out. I've read the first 2, but this one basically follows our main character, Aru, and her mom works in a museum. They live in this museum, and she's kind of like an outcast at school a little bit, and some of the popular kids come to where she works, or at least where her mom works. They come to the museum, and they kind of dare her to rub this lamp, which is supposed to be, like, hold this crazy evil spirit. So she does, thinking nothing of it. And of course, this crazy evil spirit appears. It's based on Indian mythology. It's fascinating. If you like those, like, really fast-paced, really funny, like, the writing is hilarious, the adventurous kind of, you know, stories. If you like Percy Jackson, this is a Rick Riordan Presents book. So if you like things like that, this is your book. But it's her and this other girl, and they go on this grand adventure to kind of like save the universe, basically. But I highly recommend. It's just a fun adventure. And if you like this, then it's a great like friend group throughout the rest of the series. So I recommend this one if you also are like a purple fan. But also there's like yellow and green and all the other colors on this cover, so like really it could fit a lot of things. The next one is to read a scary book. I don't read a lot of scary books. Y'all know this. Not a big horror person. But I do have a great one for this, and this is Coraline. It's terrifying. I'm sure many of you know of this book, or at least have seen the movie that came out a few years ago, but follows our main character Coraline, who moves to a new house with her parents, and it's very dreary, just kind of like, Mwah, you know, where she lives. She's not very happy about it, and she finds this door, and goes through this door, and through this door is a totally different world. It's kind of like the mirror image of where she is now. Her parents are there. Kind of the neighbors are the same, except for they're more fun. They have, you know, more exciting things to do, and she has a better time. The only difference is they all have buttons for eyes. Terrifying. So yeah, I'm not scary, you know. I mean, I'm a chicken, but scary. The next one is To Read a TBR Veteran. Again, very personal. One that I would love to get to next month, because I've had my eye on it for literally years. I tried to fit it on the first Believathon TBR, and I never got it to work, but I'm gonna do it this year, dang it. And that is Song for a Whale, and this one is by Lynn Kelly. So we follow our main character, Iris, and she's the only deaf girl in her school. She's the only deaf person in her school, and she's really good with technology and stuff like that, and she discovers and learns about this thing called Blue 55, which is a real whale who was unable to speak to other whales, and so she goes on this grand adventure to kind of create this mechanical thing that will help Blue 55 communicate with other whales, because she feels very isolated, not being able to communicate with people. And I don't know, it just sounds really fascinating, and this cover's really pretty as well. But this has been on my TBR for years, and I would love to get around to it. So fingers crossed. Stay tuned for in a week when my TBR comes, and we'll see if I can fit it on here. This one is To Read a Book with Winter Vibes. And like Green Glass House could work for this one as well, but the one that I was thinking of was Frostheart by Jamie Littler. Now, if you have heard anything about Gavin, you've probably heard that this is his favorite freaking series in the entire world. It's the first of 3. The third one like just came out like last month. But this basically takes place in a very cold, isolated world, where these things called leviathans, and there's these creatures that attack people. And the way that they communicate is by singing. So singing is kind of a no-no in this world. And we follow Ash, who has the ability to song weave, which is basically sing and communicate with these creatures, and it's thought to be bad. So Ash kind of lives with this yeti because his parents are these like travelers that went off on an adventure and just never came back one day, and so this town is taking care of him. And so due to events that happen in the beginning of this book, he ends up going on this ship called the Frostheart on an adventure to hopefully find his parents. And it's just a great adventure, but it takes place on a boat in the snow and the cold and the ice and things like that. So it's definitely one of those books that makes you cold while you're reading it, but it's perfect for those winter vibes. So the next one is another personal one, and that is a 5-star prediction. So one that was a 5-star prediction for me that actually was a 5-star is one that I will recommend because I think it's great and I really wish more people would read it. And that is this beauty, which is I Speak a Boy by Jessica Brody. And this is a kind of modernized reimagining of the story of Emma by Jane Austen. Now, you don't have to have read Emma for any of this to make sense. It's a fantastic story all on its own. But if you've had read Emma, then there's some characters in here, like some character names and some place names and situations that are based on the book, and it's just kind of like a little fun extra thing that if you read it, you're like, ah, I like that. In this book, we're following our main character, Emmy, who is just utterly obsessed with matchmaking. She tries to set up her best friend with the guy that her best friend likes at the beginning of the book, and it does not go well. And so one day she wakes up with a new app on her phone, and it's called like I Speak Boy or I Translate or something like that, and it translates boys' thoughts or what boys are saying into what they actually mean, and it's her just kind of like helping a bunch of people get together in the school, and she becomes really popular because of it. So you've got this kind of plot line, but I just loved this app and like the ability to understand boys. I don't know, it felt like a very realistic thing because no one understands what middle school boys mean. I'm not even sure middle school boys understand what they mean. And so, first-hand account over here from the husband says that middle school boys are stupid. So yeah, I thought it was really great. And I feel like everyone can relate because like I was reading this and I felt like I had gone back to like middle school Kelsey. And I related a lot more to this than I wanted to. But I don't know, I feel like this will really help, and like a lot of people can really relate to the things that these girls go through, and it's just a fun story. The next one is to read a book with a 2-word title, so I'm going to recommend A Mall Unbound by Aisha Saeed. This is just a stunning story. It takes place in Pakistan, and it's all surrounding a mall, and it talks a lot about indentured servitude a little bit, because a mall offends the family that owns the town, basically, has all the money, provides all the work, things like that. And in order to like pay back some debts that her father has, she goes to work for this family. And it's a tough story, but it's really important. I think it's really interesting to see a different culture than maybe most kids, at least from the US, would see in books. And I thought it was really interesting and really important, and was written very well. So you're reading and you're really, feeling for Amal and what she's going through and things like that. So I thought it was really, really important. Also, this cover is stunning, just beautiful. And it's a really easy book to get through. It's small, it's good for some readathons, and I highly recommend. The next one is to read a book that may surprise you, or you think will surprise you. Again, I can't really, it's kind of a personal one, but here's one that surprised me, and I feel like will surprise a bunch of people, because it also surprised my husband when he read this book. It was just mwah. And that is this one, which is the first in the Missing series, called Found by Margaret Patterson Haddix. So this is all kinds of sci-fi trippy paranormaliness throughout this book. And I can't tell you really what the series is about because huge spoilers for the first book, but we're following our 2 main characters, Jonah and Chip, and they are adopted. And they're basically on this quest to try to figure out who their parents are, where they came from, that kind of thing. But it is so surprising. Like once you figure out kind of what's going on by the end of this book, you are on the edge of your seat. And I think it would surprise anyone who reads this book, because it's really hard to kind of guess that ending unless you have already read it, which then in case you wouldn't really need to get, you guys know what I mean. It's surprising, and I think it would surprise anyone. And also it's a really great kind of sci-fi series. So the next one is to read a book that starts with your first, like the first letter of your name. And fun fact, I could find 0 that start with K. So that was fun. So I'm just gonna recommend some random ones because we all have different names. I thought this is my catch-all books that I think are great and won't fit any of the other prompts that I could think of. So first one is School for Good and Evil. This was going to be on here. So I'm sure many of you have heard me rave about this series in the past. It's one of my favorites. I started this because I read the first book during the very first Believathon. I love it. But basically, it follows 2 best friends, Sophie and Agatha, and they live in this village, and there's this rumor that people, like, their kids keep disappearing. 2 kids every, like, I don't know, few years or so. And, it's all because they're going to be taken away to this magical school. Well, Sophie and Agatha are taken one year. This school has 2 parts. You've got the School for Good and the School for Evil. And when these kids are taken away, one of them is for the School for Good and one of them is for the School for Evil. And they both think they know which school they're going to, and they end up going to the reverse of what they thought. This is just kind of like a mind-bendy, taking the normal fairy tale and making it darker and twisting it and just completely reimagining what evil is, and I just think it's so well done. And I love this series. You guys know I do. So that's a good one. And then you've also got this one, which is just a classic, and that is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Do I even need to explain to you what this is about? Because I feel like it's so well known. But if you haven't read Charlotte's Web, like seriously, it's fantastic. I don't even need to say anything else. Just freaking read it. Another one that's really good is this one, which is Molly Warner's School Reporter by Dan Kilday. Now, I'm a little bit biased, just a little bit, because I'm related to the author, but it's also great. But we follow Molly Warner, who is just a busybody. She's a gossip. She talks to everybody. She knows everything and shares a lot of information with everybody who will listen to her. But instead of punishing her, the principal puts her on the school newspaper, where she learns all about free press and the importance of being a reporter and all of that fun journalistic stuff. And then she stumbles across a story and starts writing about it. So it's really good. It's really short, good for readathons, and I think it's obviously not many people know about it. So like, it's good if you're into the journalism world. It's great. And also very realistic, because, like, the author was a journalist, and from someone who used to be in news. High quality stuff there. The next one is your most recent purchase. Again, very, very personal for you. Mine was this one, which is Beasts and Beauty, which is by Soman Chainani, the author who wrote School for Good and Evil. It's just a collection of, like, reimagined fairy tales, but darker. I'm hoping to get this one in myself next month, but this is my most recent purchase, and so I thought I'd show you, because I think it's great, and I think people should read it, because I like the author. The next one is a book that was adapted into a TV show or a movie or something like that. So I'm gonna do Percy Jackson, which is the first, is that the series? That's the series name. The first book is called The Lightning Thief. I'm sure many of you know. It was adapted into a movie that most people really, really didn't like, but we're getting a television adaptation at some point in the future. But if you like Greek mythology, but set in, like, a modern day setting, this is your book. It's great. We follow Percy Jackson, who is a demigod, and he goes to this camp, which is Camp Half-Blood, to basically learn how to protect himself, because people are out there after demigods. And there's just an adventure that comes from that, because people are after him. Been turned into a movie, and it will hopefully be turned into a much better TV show. I didn't hate the movie, but I also understand why many people did. I'm gonna get some hate for that. Alright, and the very last one is to read a book that was a cover buy for you. Now, again, very, very personal, but one that I think is just stunning, and I want the world to read this series, is the Tea Dragon Society series. And this is by Katie O'Neill. There are 3 books in this. I believe that's all. I'm not sure if they're writing anymore. But it's a graphic novel that's just a fun, first off, stunning. This art style is just beautiful, all of the colors. It also has all of the representation in it, so I think it's very well done for, you know, where we are in life right now. But it's just so pretty, and it's such a wholesome story, and it's got dragons in it that, like, create leaves that you can make tea from. So freaking cute. But this is the first in the series, and like I said, there are 3 out there, but this is just stunning. Like, I can't get over how stunning the art style in this is. So, if it's not a cover buy, it should be, because they're beautiful. But that's it. Those are all of the many, many, many middle grade recommendations I have for you. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you've got some of, you know, middle grade books yourself that you'd like to recommend. I would always like to add more middle grade to my never-ending TBR. I feel like I never read enough middle grade, so I'm always down for more. Also, let me know if you're participating in Bealievathon. I'd love to know some of maybe the prompts that you're planning on reading. I will be pulling those in about a week, so you guys can see what I'm reading. I'm not even sure. We'll see what happens. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so don't forget to check all of that out, and I will see you guys in my next video.